This is Valkyrie? Valkyrie.
Valkyria.
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 Valkyria. Valkyria.
So that is the Valkyria.
Yeah, alright. This is Valkyria Revolution. Enjoy. Or don't. So you may have noticed an addition to my wardrobe. I know, I was as surprised as you. I actually managed to find a plain long sleeve black t-shirt. I mean, first of all, long sleeves on a t-shirt, but plain black. No logos on it. You know how manufacturers love to turn you into a walking advertisement? No logos. And I promise you, this isn't turned back to front or inside out or anything, it's actually plain black. Anyway, on with the review. Valkyria Revolution is the sequel to Valkyria Chronicles, but you don't need to have played the original in order to understand this one. Which is good, because I haven't. This game tells the story of a country called Jutland under embargo by the Rusi Empire. At the same time, a group of friends looking for revenge against the Emperor decide to use their influence to start a war between the two countries. It actually sets the stage very well for a large-scale war and small-scale personal conflicts. The war is sparked by the Five Traitors, a group of childhood friends who have a grievance against the Rusi Emperor. And for the most part, the story is extremely good at balancing both the large scale of the war with the more personal stuff. There are motivations for both the country and the Five Traitors to launch the war, but then there are those who oppose the war, thinking it will make things worse. You get to see both sides during the conflict, both in a philosophical and military sense, so there aren't really any surprises. So the story's on point. What about the gameplay?
Sorry, pal. This is going well. Not good.
It's not so good. This game immediately feels familiar to anyone who's ever played Dynasty Warriors. You run around the battlefield hacking everyone else on it to pieces. There are some differences though. Instead of leading or being inside a huge army, you only have a small team of 4 characters. In addition to your melee weapon, you get a gun, grenades and mana powers, or spells. The guns and grenades are limited for ammo and spells require mana to cast. Doesn't sound too shabby. But then we come to the confusing addition to the game. It has a turn-based battle system. So let me explain. Normally with a turn-based strategy game, you will take your turn and then your opponent will take their turn. Then you'll take your turn, then they'll take their turn. Or each character on screen will have a battle timer. It's literally a timer that fills up on screen. When it fills to its maximum, you can execute an action. Actions being attack, move, use an item, use an ability, whatever. This game's a bit different though. It's more like an action-orientated hack and slash. But the battle timer prevents you from taking an offensive action unless it's full. The result is that you can move around freely, you can block, you can dodge, you can sprint, but you can't attack unless the timer's full. It's the one action that you're restricted on. And for what feels like it should be a fast-paced hack and slash, but that battle timer really slows it down. Really slows it down. You don't feel it at first in Chapter 1, Chapter 2 because the enemies are pushovers, but as the enemies start to get harder, you'll feel it start to drag. It just slows everything down and confuses the hell out of me even after playing the game for ages. Another problem is the combat itself. It's not bad, just dull.
I'll rock your world. Enemy down. Nice.
By the way, is this game annoying yet? It was me. This game is riddled with loading screens like this. There was one section, I'm not joking, there was a loading screen, a 20-second cutscene, another loading screen, and then the cutscene afterwards was pretty much the same as the 20-second one. If you take out the loading screen, you wouldn't notice any difference. It features the same characters, the same scenes, everything. It makes me wonder why they even bothered to include that loading screen right there. 20-second scene. I'm pretty sure some of them are less than that as well. Why bother? You know what, I think this joke has run its course anyway. Problem solved. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about the game. The game has very lengthy cutscene sections. It does that Japanese thing where it explains things, then explains them again, and then explains them just one more time. At times I felt like I was just watching this game, rather than actually playing and interacting with it. The graphics are nothing special, but it does have this painting style filter over everything. I can see some people hating it, but it doesn't really bother me. I think it's kinda nice. This method of walking, it reminds me of Resident Evil or Dark Cloud, you know, that whole turn completely in one direction, then walk forwards in a straight line thing. Lip syncing isn't great either, if I'm being honest.
About him. The Amlet I thought I knew was always calm. A respectable soldier who never lost his temper on the battlefield.
The game tries to be expansive, but doesn't really succeed. The central area, you can place orders for new equipment, you can buy materials to build that equipment in, but that's about it. For the size of the area, there's not much there. You've also got Basil's factory where you can switch out upgrades and powers. Besides that, there's a cemetery and a pub, which serve almost no purpose whatsoever. Also, there's a wheel on the side of this building. It's been driving me mental. What the hell's it there for? Like Dragon Age, you control one character at a time while the computer handles the other three. Each character can have priorities equipped, meaning the computer does certain actions a bit more frequently than usual. Unfortunately, the computer doesn't perform attacks whenever it can. But by that I mean the battle timers recover, but the computer waits before doing something. What it's waiting for, I've no idea. What annoys me is one of the priorities is specifically designed to do exactly this: wait before attacking. I don't use this priority, but it does that anyway. Certain priorities are useful, like melee or gun attacks or healing, but others like block or dodge can hamper an already slow teammate. Enemies aren't much better, in the sense that they take ages to wear down and don't fight all that well anyway. Again, not bad, just dull.
Then let us
Let's
dance.
do this! This'll be a good one! Company.
Didn't have what it takes. Look what I can do. Rest in peace. Kabang! Terribly sorry. Need more training. See how tough I am. Oopsies.
Speaking of characters, the game wastes no time in dropping 11 team members on you. 11. That causes a few problems. Problem number 1. Selecting a team when you don't know who's who or what they're capable of. If you don't know about the class system, if you don't know which class your characters are or what each class does, and if you don't know what each character specialises in, you can't build an effective team. Simple as. Problem number 2. Equipping and upgrading a team when you don't know who should have what. It's all very well having a roster of 11 characters to play with, but you don't know who should have a rifle, or who should have a rocket launcher, who should have a frag grenade, who should have a smoke grenade, who should have fire powers, who should have earth powers. When you start the game, you've got no idea. There's too many characters to be playing around with. Problem number 3. Trying to collect enough Ragnite to equip everyone with effective powers. This one's going to take some explaining. Okay, so the first thing is that Ragnite is, in the story's lore, it's a blue stone. But in practical terms, it's an equipable power. It's like Ring of Fire, or Fireball, or Water Wave, or Healing, or anything like that. Ragnite is just your special powers. And they're equipable, and you can change them, which is pretty good. But here's the thing. First of all, Ragnite drops by an RNG system. It's totally random drops. To make matters worse, Ragnite is coded according to, firstly, elemental type, fire, water, earth, air, and then it's also, half the time, coded according to class, and there are 4 classes in the game. The problem is that each class tends to specialise in a particular element. Attackers favour fire, for example, healers favour water. So when I come across a fire-based power that's for a healer, that creates a bit of a problem. It's not that healers can't equip fire powers, they can, but you need to upgrade their fire level in order to equip the higher level fire powers on them. And being a healer, it's easier to rank up their water skill than fire. The fire element is simply further away from the centre of the upgrade web. And since certain powers, you will favour certain powers over others, but again, they drop by an RNG system. And they're always coded to a certain element, and half the time they're coded to a particular class as well. But they're not always coded to the same class that uses that element. So if you get a fire power for a healer, you're stuffed. You just have to live with it. In addition, each character has personality traits called potentials. Some are positive, others are negative. I think it's an attempt to give them unique character stuff. Some gain defense when surrounded, or gain power when a certain person is attacked. Others have hay fever, or fear of heights that impairs them instead. There's a main menu of sorts. It's in the form of a glen with 2 people in it. From left to right there's a glossary and history book, and then the professor. Talking to her advances the story.
It's a bit awkward to navigate though, since the game doesn't tell you where things are on it. There's a ton of extra stuff here, including cutscenes that don't play as a normal part of the game. You have to fire them up manually for some reason. I'm usually a sucker for extra lore, but the game is already so slow, even I couldn't be bothered with it all.
I got to chapter 4, bearing in mind that there's 10 chapters in this game, I got to chapter 4 and I suddenly realised that the main menu area in the glade, there was a notebook that I hadn't seen before. I didn't even know the notebook was there. And I didn't bother reading it because this game is already chock full of extra cutscenes and stuff, and the game is slow enough as it is, so I didn't want to read it. Then I got to chapter 7 of 10 and I decided to give the notebook a read. And guess what? If you read certain notebook entries, they activate cutscenes. And if you read the right ones, if you view the right cutscenes, it unlocks additional potentials for your characters. Yeah, potentials being those things that give you a positive or negative effect in battle. Well, it gives you positive ones, or replaces a negative one with a positive one. And I found this out at chapter 7 of 10. I mean, you could argue it's my own fault, but the main menu isn't exactly well labelled. It just says, use left thumbstick to navigate. Well, okay, but what's here? I didn't even know the notebook was there. I didn't know the notebook was there. 3/4 of the game I'd played before I realised I'd missed a massive advantage through the potentials. You're welcome, by the way.
Eventually you'll start to figure things out. The characters, the abilities, you'll fight through enemies and wade and slog through others.
Let us dance.
Are you okay?
Back in the hub areas, you can listen in on circles or groups of friends that share a common interest. You'll get more character lore, but also gain new priorities you can equip on team members. I like the equipment creation system. It's not that deep, but it is flexible. And the stuff you build yourself is way better than the stuff ready-made on sale, unlike most RPGs. Plus, it's a lot cheaper, although you do need to provide the raw materials, which you can find or buy. Place your order. Go away on a mission.
This is a good position.
Cover me!
Terribly sorry.
Cover me!
Come back and it's ready.
Look at the quality. Come back anytime.
So let's talk about the bosses.
Pay your dollars!
Look what I can do. Bad feeling.
They're bullet sponges.
I must defeat you. Keep an eye on them.
Let's feel your ears.
What is that?
Godot. Taste my blade. I feel as though I've seen that.
Are you sure?
This boss, you have to fight him 3 times in the first half of the game. And he never changes his attack pattern. It's always the same from start to finish. And do you want to know what's even worse about this guy? Once you've damaged him to a certain point, he just starts blocking your attacks. Melee, gun, grenade, most of your magic, and it doesn't seem to matter which direction you throw the attack at him from. He just blocks stuff until he decides to let you damage him. You just be wailing on the guy for ages, and occasionally you'll land a double-digit hit for you, something pathetic like that. It's especially annoying because the game actually has a tutorial on blocking, or more specifically blocking with a shield, but nevertheless blocking. Godot, in one of the training sessions, he raises his shield and the game specifically teaches you to go round the back of him. Doesn't work. Doesn't work on this guy, on this boss.
Also, some enemies do this trick, but it's very rare.
Bullet sponge bosses, RNG loot, go to a region on the map and you get dropped in exactly the same place every time. Is this game trying to copy Destiny? That wasn't a compliment.
The Valkyria isn't much better, but at least she doesn't block everything you throw at her. She's still tough, but you can beat her if you're careful.
Valkyria by yourself. Deception is salvation. We live through this.
Come on now. I can't go full speed.
Destruction
It
is
must be because of
salvation.
that song. Keep an eye on them. Come on, hold fast. Only rounds my time. Don't explode. Don't let this happen.
That's on Steve.
Keep an eye on them.
Beyond.
Come on now. Do or die. Keep an eye on them.
Beyond.
That won't work. Come on now. Look alive. On your track. Let's go.
Valkyria Revolution feels like it's trying to be a Dynasty Warriors clone, but it also feels like it's trying to trip itself up at every step of the way. It's hard to find Ragnite powers you want to use. There's too many cutscenes in proportion to gameplay. Bosses are bullet sponges. You get too many squad mates too early. The battle timers take too long to recharge. There's too many barriers in your way, constantly trying to slow you down. Honestly, I felt like the story was an 8, but the gameplay was a 4, more or less speaking. So I'm going to split the difference and say Valkyria Revolution gets a 6 out of 10. It's above average, but instead of being a fun hack and slash like Dynasty Warriors tries to be, it just tries to slow you down at every single step of the way. So that was Valkyria Revolution, 6 out of 10, above average. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend it. It was only the story that kept me pushing forwards with it. The gameplay, not so much. Next major review is going to be Micro Machines World Series. Yeah, I know it's not a major release, but there are no major releases out right now. They're all further back into the back end of this year. If anyone's interested, I have got a list of all the major reviews I'm going to do every fortnight. That's up on Facebook already, so if you want to know my schedule, just go and check that out. Until then, I will see you.